All righty. Perfect. Thanks, Fiona. Welcome everyone to another Learn to Return Learning Network event. My name is Sarah Sutton. I'm the Director of School Programs at Health Commons Project. Today's workshop is really focused on supporting your school district in documenting your COVID-19 testing program and packaging it as a grab and go toolkit. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our partners. Learn to Return is funded by the Washington State Department of Health, advised by OSPI, implemented in partnership with all 9 ESDs, and supported by the Health Commons Project. Next slide, please. Quick housekeeping, we should have everybody muted. Today's session is pretty informal. My goal is to introduce you to a resource that we've created, so feel free to take yourself off of mute if you have any clarifying questions as I'm reviewing it. You can also drop any questions or feedback into the chat. Fiona will monitor that and interrupt me if I need to address anything in there. This event is being recorded so you can share it with your colleagues who are unable to attend. We will post it on the Learn to Return website and send it out afterwards to folks. Next slide, please. As many of you know, the Learning Network is designed to be a support resource for all of you. This is a space for Washington schools to learn together, grow together, figure out how to do COVID testing and COVID services. This learning network is available to all Washington schools, not just those who are enrolled in the program. We're also joined today by a couple of colleagues from the State Department of Health, OSPI, local health departments, the ESDs. So hopefully folks are feeling supported and like you're not doing this all alone. As always, we are incredibly grateful for your hard work and commitment to keep schools safe and open during COVID-19. Next slide, please. Okay, before we get to the content of today's workshop, the Washington State Department of Health wanted us to ask you a couple of questions to inform their planning for next school year. Before we pull up the Zoom poll with those 3 questions, I want to start by acknowledging that everybody on this call wants and needs to know what next school year looks like. You need to know what resources will be made available to you. You need to know what requirements you're going to be asked to adhere to. And I do not have those answers today. I know that that is frustrating because I know that schools need to finalize their budgets and finalize their plan for next school year, and you really do need this information, but we don't have it yet. Responding to these 3 questions is an opportunity to make your voice heard and let the Department of Health know which resources you would like to see next school year. My commitment to this group and to all other schools in Learn to Return is that as soon as we know what resources will be made available to you next school year, what guidance will be applicable for next school year, we will spread the word like wildfire. We will use our newsletter. The program managers can reach out via email and phone to have conversations with you. There is a group, but I don't have those answers today. Jordan, do you want to go ahead and share the questions with this group?
Yep.
If you are from a local health department, an ESD, Health Commons, please do not respond to these questions. You should have other feedback mechanisms to share your input with DOH. Please reserve this space for our school colleagues. The other category, you can either type your answer in the chat. If you would like to stay anonymous or you don't want to share it with the full group, you can send a direct message to Jordan Koch, C-O-C-H, Jordan Koch, and she will capture it and make sure that we report back that feedback to the Department of Health. Okay, let's take just another minute. Alrighty, Jordan, how are we doing on response rates?
So right now we've got 55 of 102 participants having finished their responses, so about 53%.
Okay, another 30 seconds or so from folks, knowing that we won't get to 100% since non-school colleagues will hold on responding. All right, let's move on. Jordan, is there a way to show the results right now?
Let me end it and then hopefully I'll be able to. Yep, share results. Okay, can everyone see those now?
I can. Others?
Okay, great. Seeing some nods.
Yeah, not surprised to see a tendency towards rapid tests. I was reflecting on it today. Folks may remember when we started school-based testing in Washington, there was a huge hesitancy towards rapid tests. Remember, we were worried about false positives and negatives. It's been interesting to see the preference for fast turnaround time exceeding the concerns over sensitivity. I mean, it makes sense. Okay, thanks everyone for doing this. We will, not only will we share this with the Department of Health, we will capture this and any feedback from the chat and share it back with all of you just for transparency and accountability so you know what we're elevating up to DOH. Alrighty, next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of today's event is to support you and your COVID teams in documenting everything you've done related to COVID-19 testing. We want to help you not just document it, but package it in a way that, say, a new team member could pick up and run with it. From my perspective, you all have done the hardest part, which is building a testing program from scratch. Maintaining it, adapting it, changing it, all of that should be easier than what you've gone through over the past 2 years, but it will really help to document, to take stock of everything you've learned and how you do it, and then package it in a way that somebody else can learn from it. So that's the purpose of today's event, and I'll walk you through some resources we've created to try to make the documentation process a little bit easier for you. Fiona, why don't we drop the link to the Google Drive COVID-19 testing toolkit in the chat, and then I'll screen share it and walk folks through it. School colleagues, if we put a link to a public Google Drive in the chat, will you be able to access it? Okay. Okay. Can folks see my Google Drive screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Alrighty, so there's a lot going on here. Let me orient you to what we're looking at, and then we'll do a deep dive together. And please, this is informal, interrupt me if you have any questions or if I'm not making sense. We have thought about everything that you might need to document. In fact, this might be a little bit exhaustive and more than you need, but we wanted to err on that side so you're not having to try to fill in all of the gaps yourself. What we've done is we have created a template for what your toolkit will look like, and we've put placeholders everywhere for you to fill in the blanks. In the areas that we were able to pre-populate the information, we did that for you. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So, okay, in this Google folder, we've actually organized the content for you in 2 ways, and it just depends on your preference and your style, which of the 2 options you may pick. So down here at the very bottom, we have the template, and you can think of the template as the master document with everything all in one file. And that's what I'll walk you through today. You might choose to use the template if you envision printing this off, working through it by hand, storing it in a physical binder. This way it's all in one file for you. So that's the template, it's your master document. The other way that we've organized it is in folders in which every piece of content is its own standalone document. You might want to use this if you envision your final product being a virtual binder or a living document that folks can go in and edit it over time. Let me show you the master document. Again, this is the template. All of the content in here is the exact same content as the folder version. They're just organized in different ways. Okay, so we have a nice cover page. You can add your school name and your logo. Things are constantly changing, so we do recommend for version control, you keep dating it based on when you last revisited it. I mean, things could change between even now and next month, so. Okay, what does this template contain? Jess, did you have a question? Okay, this template has 10 sections. So you can imagine your final binder could have 10 files, 10 folders in it. The first is your school's COVID-19 testing team. Who are the key contacts? What are their roles and responsibilities? How do you get a hold of them? The second is key contacts external to your school district. So your local health department, your educational service district, your health commons point of contact, etc. The third section of your toolkit is federal, state, and local public health guidance. We've already pre-populated some of that for you. The fourth is broad testing program considerations. And then the fifth section here, you'll see that that's one of the bulkier sections, testing vendors and supplies. We have pre-populated all of this for you, but my recommendation would be that you read it and figure out which pieces are relevant to your school district, because we captured every piece of information for every single testing vendor, some of whom your school district may not be using. So section 5, your homework would be to read it. It's some nice, light bedtime reading. Read it and then edit it and figure out which pieces you want in your final version. Testing 6 is specific, section 6 is specific to the different testing populations you may be offering this service to. Section 7 is testing administration. Then we have communication materials and procedures, lessons learned, and then any additional funding or support that you've received for the program. So if you click on the table of contents, it will link you to the page inside. So section 1 here is your school COVID-19 testing team, right? So here's the placeholder that we've created for you to go ahead and pre-populate that information. One thing that you might want to think about is, depending on how you've set up your testing program, does it make sense to have a district level binder or a school building level binder? I could see some school districts doing what we've done, which is maybe your district team takes a first pass at it, fill out all the things that should be the same for every school building, and then send that pre-populated version to your building leaders and ask them to fill out whatever blanks remain. So for example, if your high school has a different testing program than an elementary school, you might want to consider that. So that's it for section 1. We'll need to fix this formatting, Fiona, before we send it out. Section 2 is key contacts external to your school district, your LHJ, Health Commons, your ESD. If you're partnered with a local health system, you might want to add them into this. If you have a community partner who's supporting you, you might want to add their contact information. Again, I know that this is information that all of you know inside and out, but the goal here is to document it in a way that somebody new could work with it, say in August. Okay. Section 3, federal, state, and local public health guidance. We went ahead and pre-populated the federal and state guidance. You'll see that we dated it to include the most up-to-date version of the guidance. Your local health department might have their own guidance. So we have a placeholder for you to add that. That might be a link to their website. It might be email communication that you've had with them. It just depends on the communication style of your local health department. Okay. Section 4 is testing program considerations, and you can think of this section as almost like a time capsule for the context that you've been working in. So what I mean by that is, like, how do parents and families feel about COVID, about your school offering COVID testing services? How does your community feel? What are their preferences? What are your school's capabilities to be successful in this space? I think it's good to name these things and to document them just so you have it. If somebody's reading this, whatever, 5 years from now, it's just a little time capsule of the local context that you built this program in. You can skip it if you don't like it, if you don't want it for your binder. Okay, so section 5, this was the really bulky one that we have pre-populated for you. Again, my recommendation is for you to read through this and figure out which pieces of it you want in your final version. We have an overview of the different types of tests, PCR, rapid antigen, which includes take-home tests, pooled testing, and saliva testing. For folks who don't know, we do have access to saliva tests if you'd like to integrate that into your program. The benefits of saliva testing, it's kind of like spit in a tube testing. It might be nice to offer to folks who have an aversion to nasal swabs, be it that they have sensory considerations, or we know that some folks are concerned about the chemical that's used to sterilize swabs, which is scientifically an unfounded concern. But, if folks would be more comfortable with the saliva test, we can help get that set up for you. We have an overview of the testing menu and all of the different vendors that we can connect you to. So again, it is unlikely that your school district is using all of these. You're probably only using 1, 2, maybe 3. So you'll want to think about what do you want to pull out and add to your binder, to your toolkit. We just wrote it for you so you didn't have to go searching for this information by yourself. So we have PCR, rapid antigen. All of this is information that you already know, pooled testing, saliva testing. The question is, what do you want to document for folks to come back and revisit in August? Here's a detailed matrix on the different vendors, who to contact if you have questions or need supplies. These link to all the different training videos, toolkits, consent forms. So again, pick and choose what's right for you. I'll do a special call out for the take-home tests. We did develop a training video that is, we call it language agnostic. It doesn't use any language, written or verbal, so you can send it to any student or family member or community member despite their preferred language, and they should be able to follow it. Information on how to do your inventory management. Again, go through this, edit it with a heavy hand, cut the things that may not be relevant for your school district or school building. A template that you can use for inventory management. Here's storage guidance. You'll want to pull whichever ones are relevant for which testing technologies you're using. I will do a call out right now to remind folks, as you prepare for summer, you need to store your COVID test kits in a cool, dry, temperature-controlled environment that stays between 36 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. If you store your test kits in a trailer or a shed during a summer heat wave, you will have to dispose of your test kits. The good news is this toolkit tells you how to dispose of test kits a little bit further down here. So again, you can pull whichever ones. We have this all organized by different vendors and testing types, so you just pull the ones that make sense for you. You'll see down here a call out for translation services. In case folks don't know, the Learn to Return program can provide free translation and language support services, be that translating documents or deploying interpreters to testing events. If you're interested in that, go ahead and email your Health Commons program manager and they can help you out. Okay, I've gone through 5 sections. I'm gonna pause. Any clarifying questions from folks before I move on? Anything in the chat, Fiona? Excellent. We will keep chugging along. Section 6, we are back to fill in the blank templates. Testing populations, here we're trying to get to the idea that your school district may be testing different groups of people for different reasons, and there may be a different testing protocol for them. So for example, we have call outs to symptomatic staff and students, school faculty and staff who may be exempt and have to test on a routine basis to stay in compliance with their vaccine exemption, student athletes, students participating in the performing arts. If you have a special testing program for your special ed programs, this is the type of area, the place in the toolkit that you could capture any population-specific details. And again, this is an outline. If that's not relevant for your school district or doesn't make sense for you, you can cut it, you can skip it, whatever works for you. Okay, section 7, testing administration. This is really the who, what, where, when, how of COVID testing. Who are your test observers? When can people get tested? Where do they get tested? How do they access the testing program? Be that like physical instructions on how to access it, procedural instructions on what needs to happen in order for somebody to qualify for a test at your district. We've linked to consent forms here. These are all translated into 30-ish languages, I think, but your school district may have edited some of the consent forms, or you may have your own version, so you'll want to make sure you're linking to the right ones there. What are the reporting requirements? These may vary a little bit by local health department, but in general, they should only apply to the rapid antigen tests. And then testing instructions for how to observe or administer a test. Again, this is information that you already know. You just need to write it down so somebody else can learn from it if needed. Okay, section 8 is communication materials. Fiona, we might want to retitle this one to communication materials and procedures. So this is a space for you to store any communications you've sent out to families or staff. If you have, let's say, like a superintendent letter that went out that talks about your testing program. If you have communications related to an outbreak, it might be good just to save those all in a single area. That way, if you need them next year, you can just pull from content you've already written. We put in this placeholder announcement in case you wanted to pull from any of the content that we've developed. Again, defer to you if this is relevant or not. It's like pretty PCR heavy, and based on the survey, it seems like folks will be transitioning to more rapid tests next year. Placeholders for what do you do if you identify a positive case? Who do you notify? How do you tell them? What do you tell them? How do you document that notification? Same with negative test results. Contact tracing, the who, what, where, when of contact tracing, outbreak communications, Any other materials you've developed, go ahead and store them in a single place so you can pull from the content next year if needed. Section 9 is lessons learned. We recommend that you do a debrief with your COVID testing teams. You're likely already doing this on a regular basis, but talk to the folks closest to this work. What are their successes? What are their challenges? What might you consider for next school year? Again, I know that we don't have answers for what next school year looks like, but that type of debrief and at least collecting the feedback now, then you can imagine when DOH does announce what next school year will look like, you can pull from this and hit the ground running to adapt your program. And then last section, section 10, this is a placeholder if your school district has accessed the labor support fund from Department of Health, which is coming through OSPI in your direct apportionment. We would just recommend that you save a copy of your labor funding agreement and the MOU. Your business or finance office likely has this. If you're struggling to find it, you can email your Health Commons program manager and we can help get it for you. And that's it. That's everything that we could think of. Any glaring gaps from folks? I know that I walked through it really quickly. So as a reminder, I just walked you through the template, which is like the master document, everything's in a single file. We also organized it as an electronic folder system, which you can see here. So for example, like section 8, communications, you can go in here. We've already built it out for you. It's all the same content, positive results. Here's that template. What do I do when I identify a positive? Who does what? What do we say? How do we talk about it, etc. So just organized in different ways, whichever one works for you. If you hate both of these formats, that is okay. What I would recommend is use this checklist. This checklist is like a detailed table of contents that captures all of the content that we think you should be documenting. You could use this checklist and then format however you prefer or whatever system your school district already uses, right? So section 1, school COVID-19 testing team, who are the key players, what are their contact information, roles and responsibilities. So again, same information, same content, just organized in a different way for you. Okay. Any questions from folks at this point? Oh, good. I'm looking at the chat. That's so nice to hear. I'm so glad that this is helpful. Sonia doesn't see the checklist in any of the folders. Sonia, does that mean that you don't like the formatting that we made?
Well, yes and no. So the Google Drive isn't easily accessible for me, but as we were sitting here talking, I took them all out and threw them in a folder on my desktop, but I don't see the checklist. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't see any of my documents saying I have a checklist, and that looks like an excellent resource. So
great. Well, I can follow up with you via email and make sure you have the checklist. Does anybody else have anything missing? You should have template, checklist, and then the folders, if you like the folders. Okay. Fiona, can we go back to the PowerPoint? Sweet. So what I would recommend from here is figure out which format you prefer, be it the master document template, the Google folders, the checklist, if you want to format it your own way. Figure out which one you prefer, download it, save it to your own system, just like Sonia did, and then start working on it. Either you're working on it, your team's working on it, you may delegate different sections to different folks, but start filling in those blanks. And then for section 5, pour your favorite drink, whatever, coffee or Gatorade or whatever it is, do that nice bedtime reading and pull out the pieces that are most relevant for your school district. If you need help throughout this process, we are hosting office hours for the first 3 weeks of May. They will be every Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m. or 12 to 1 p.m. So whichever time works for you. Drop in office hours, super informal if you want to work through something with a member of the Health Commons team, ESD colleagues, folks from local health departments. You're also welcome to join those office hours if you'd like to work through anything with folks on the call. Great. And then my hope, no promises, but my hope is that we can do one final Learning Network event in May, mid-May, and we can share with you the resources that this program will provide to your school district next school year. We can invite Department of Health and OSPI to join, all of the ESDs can be here, and we can talk through as a group what resources you'll have next school year. If we need to make any changes to this template based on what we learned from Department of Health, we can also hold some space in the next Learning Network to do call outs for those. Great. So that's it. That's all I have for folks. Any questions, reactions? Folks from Health Commons, did I miss anything in this overview? Okay. Laura, I see your question. I guess that is how I am thinking of this, because I see the value in schools having some level of COVID testing at their disposal. It is a way that you can keep your staff and your students safe. We've seen varied access to COVID testing in different communities. Schools are a trusted access point. I know that COVID testing, it's scope creep is a term that I've heard from educators and school partners, but I really think it's made a difference to keeping schools open. So I am operating, this is me personally speaking, I am operating under the assumption that we will see some level of COVID testing in schools next year. And that's why I encourage you to start documenting, taking stock of everything you've learned, so you don't have to rebuild this infrastructure next school year or for another surge or another round of outbreaks. Laura, anything else from you before we move on to Deborah? Okay. Deborah, it's an interesting question, and I might defer to, this toolkit is really focused on COVID testing, but you likely have other binders and preparation work that's being done for other parts of COVID response in your school. So I might defer to your communication director or your superintendent on what level of documentation they want for that. For the purposes of this toolkit, as I've been envisioning it, which might not be the right framing, but I would capture content that you could recycle next school year if you're having to do this again, or if you're choosing to do this again. Alrighty, Fiona, why don't we stop screen sharing? Any other questions or final thoughts from the group while we're all together? Awesome. Well, thank you for joining today. Health Commons is always available to you. Drop by the office hours. Feel free to email your program manager if you want to do a one-on-one session through this, or if this has prompted anything else for you, like saliva testing or language access services. We're really here to help to the best of our ability. Have a great day and see you all later.